What's going on? What's going on? Game Changing Network. Gonna be a real quick video today. Just definitely want to speak on something I had seen, something that was sent to me really quick because it's something that I feel like a lot of people get misunderstood. So you see the title: Toddlers and Kids Around Dogs. Um, First thing first, gotta thank 300cruisers.com for sponsoring this episode of Dante Dog Stories. If you're looking for extravagant travel, definitely check out 300cruises.com. And right into it. Dog of the day, for a specific reason. The American Pit Bull Terrier. Uh, like I said, this video was kind of brought about because somebody sent me an article about a young girl getting killed probably like 3 or 4 days ago. Um, she was attacked by a dog and ended up dying because of the injuries. Uh, so very, very tragic situation. And the owner of the dog actually has been charged with murder, I believe. And I just shared the article on my Facebook. So if you're watching on Facebook, you can actually see the article. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe as well. And you can also look up the actual article that I'm speaking on. If you just type in 7-year-old girl dies because of a dog attack. And the reason the dog of the day is the American Pit Bull Terrier is basically because one thing you have to ensure when you have this breed on hand is you have to acquire responsibility. In the article, it explains that the owner knew that the dog used to roam the neighborhood or roam the area where they stayed in the country or rural area. The dog, one day, the day that the girl was attacked, of course, got to the little girl, and nobody was able to come help the little girl in time. And the injuries she suffered, she died from. When I say responsibility, meaning the owner is definitely should be held responsible as the law is holding him responsible because that's just being irresponsible, knowing your dog is roaming around, knowing you have a certain type of breed, and then a situation like this happens, a young girl losing her life behind just irresponsible actions. It's definitely nothing I agree with. It's something that I always tell anybody that gets a pup from me um, that has any type of drive, like a pit bull terrier. Just be responsible and know what you're doing because things can get out of hand in cases where you're not being responsible, and then you have situations like this where kids lose their lives behind things like this. So, but one thing I say people often get misunderstood is this doesn't have to be the case, or this is not the case if you actually introduce your dogs correctly to kids or to toddlers and show them how to respect their boundaries and things like that. And so those are just a couple of things I want to touch on because I know a lot of people who have newborns and then they already have a dog, or people who have kids and plan on getting dogs. So in this video, I'm just gonna go over some behaviors and some things to do as far as when it comes to having a pup, an older dog around your kids and your toddlers or your babies when you do bring them into your home. So let's get right into it. And it's going to be in no particular order. I appreciate the love on Facebook. Like I said, it's going to be a real quick video too, but it's going to be very, very important. I think oftentimes people get confused that dogs are humans and they often humanize their dogs too much, and they think that their dogs are supposed to know how to act around kids just because they're around in the family, just because they're a family dog. That's not the case. You actually have to teach and train your dog on what to do around kids, on how to respect their boundaries, on how to not do certain things that may trigger that dog in the future to basically lash out on that kid because the dog is annoyed. Um, and when I say kid, I'm talking of ages of about 4 to about at least 12 because people think, I can just leave my kid with dogs alone and not knowing sometimes that sometimes kids antagonize dogs to the point where they're not knowing they're doing it, they're just playing with the dog. And the dog is getting agitated, and then of course the dog has nothing to do but respond. The only way dog can talk is by barking and with their mouths, and they use their teeth. So that's what usually happens. A kid usually gets bit because oftentimes the kid is not supervised around the dog, may have done something to the dog, to trigger that dog to react to that kid. I don't really see many cases where it doesn't happen like that. Um, it's very rare to see a dog just lash out on the kid for doing nothing, especially if it's a dog that doesn't do this often. Dogs typically don't behave in that manner. That's one thing about it. So I want to bring up this picture. Right here, you're looking at my son and at the time a 5-month-old pup. And if you can look at the body language, you don't see, which my son is 2, you don't see him just hugging the dog, grabbing the dog, ears, putting his hand in the nose. He got his hands down to the side. The pup is sniffing him to just to, of course, get his scent. But it's not the pup jumping on the kid. It's not the pup smelling the kid's butt or just being overbearing in the introduction. This is what you want. So the reason I bring this picture up is because this is how to correctly do it. A lot of times, again, you have people just put their dog and their kid together. In this picture, it was the introduction. I'm showing the pup how to meet a toddler. You're not overexcited. You're not jumping up and down. You're not wagging the tail to where it's gonna slap the kid in the face. You're not pawing at the kid. You're not making bite gestures towards the kid. And then you also have to teach your kid or your toddler not to be overbearing or overexcited as well. So that's why I say you see my son with his hands to the side, not doing anything to cause the dog to want to react or play with him, because I don't want anything to happen because of the size difference and, of course, the power that the dog possesses over the child. So that's something that I know, being a responsible owner, could be issues if I didn't have that control. So I want people to look at this and realize that if you haven't done it this way, you've probably done it incorrectly, and you want to at least scale back and make sure your dogs know how to act around your kids. One thing I don't have my son do is, like I say, pet the dogs. There's no reason for him to want to pet the dogs and love on the dogs unless he sees me doing it, and which I'm not going to do it often to the point where I'm going to create an energy around my dogs where it's overbearing as well. Um, Only time I really pet the dogs is when I'm training. And if they're doing good, then they get petted. So my son's out there with me training the dogs, and I do something where I want to reward a dog with my physical touch, then that's the time that I'm usually petting the dogs. But in a situation like this where they're just going to be out roaming around and he's going to be out there, I don't want him to be bothered with them. So I want them to introduce themselves and then go on about their ways. I don't want my son to be affectionate with these dogs, because again, that could cause issues down the line if the dog doesn't process that the same way that the kid does. Because a lot of times you have these kids come in that be pulling on the dog's ears, putting their fingers in the dog's nose, playing out in the dog's mouth, squeezing the dog tight on his neck. And these dogs sometimes don't understand those gestures and think that the kid is trying to hurt them. And then that's when you have that dog turn around and lash out on that kid because it doesn't know. So key things to do, again, introduce your dog and your child correctly. Even, again, in this picture, it's a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old puppy. But even if you have a 10-year-old, you don't want your 10-year-old to be overbearing with a lot of excitement meeting new dogs, because this creates an energy with that dog that, again, down the line, you never know the situation, could cause that dog to lash out against that kid if taken the wrong way. You want your kids to see the dog, and you want your kid to respect the boundaries of that dog just as well as that dog respects the boundaries of that kid. Anytime my son is around the dogs are not in his face, jumping up, licking in his face. If they are approaching him like they want to be, I'm gonna stop that. I'm gonna correct that. I'm gonna ask him to back up and give him his space to create those boundaries, so the dogs know, okay, within a certain feet, I can be within the child, but I'm not going to be in the child's face at all times. I'm not going to be expecting to do that at all times. Therefore, the dog gets the mentality of, okay, when the kid is out here, I'll go say hey and I'll go about my business. Those are the type of interactions you want, unless, again, you're training your dog. Now, if you're training your dog and your kid is around you training, you definitely want your kid around, because, again, you can reward your dog with positive physical touch. And those are the times that you want your kid petting on the dog. But any other time than that, it's just too much for no reason. So keep in mind, you don't want to humanize your dogs because that's where mistakes happen. The dog gets too comfortable being around humans, thinks they are human as well, and they do things like roll over kids and stomp on them and jump on them, thinking that the kid is okay with it because they're able to do this within the family because they feel like they're one of us. Those are not the actions that you want to complete with this. Um, and oftentimes they'll cause really, really big mistakes. So keep in mind, the introduction plays one of the biggest parts. Boundaries is going to be the second thing that's going to play probably one of the biggest parts when your dog knows uh, when to come around and when to stay away. And then third, I mean, it's all based on you and your responsibility and your training. If you don't have control of your dogs, then I wouldn't even try to bring your child around the dogs. If you know yourself that when you ask your dog to do something and it takes them a couple of times to do it, I wouldn't want that dog around my kids. So that means maybe you have to step it step it up on your training end to get that dog in tune on what's going on. Because me personally, if I have a dog that's not going to listen to me when they're around, then why would I want them around my kid in case something goes wrong and then I can't control that dog to stop doing whatever to the kid at any time? You're gonna find yourself in a big issue. So that's one thing that I will always tell a customer or any client or anybody that reaches out to me and tell them, if you don't totally feel that you're gonna have complete control over your dog at all times, don't bring your kid around. It only causes confusion for the situation. The energy is completely off because sometimes, like I say, kids are usually energetic, and then you as an adult maybe screaming or yelling at the kid to do something, then you find yourself screaming and yelling at the dog, and it completely kills the energy. And again, dogs react to fight or flight. It send that dog into the fight or flight response rather than just being able to be around the child or be around the kid normally and act calmly, which is what you want. So those are the main three things that you have to ensure that you're gonna do when having a kid or a toddler around your child. Um, introduce them correctly, meaning your dog should know not to be jumping on the child, not to be waiting on hugs and kisses and pets and things like that. Um, they should know as far as the boundaries that you want, meaning the distance between that child and the dog at whatever time they're around each other, whether it's outside, inside, or whatever they're doing. That dog needs to know the boundaries. So after the introduction with me, I want the dog to go be itself. I don't want the dog up under the child. I want the child to be able to still be a child around. And then third, the owner's actual confidence within the training that they have with the dog. Those three things there are definitely the three things that you have to start with and think about prior to bringing any dog around a kid or vice versa. Um, Oftentimes you'll see that, or I'll see when I go to clients and these type of issues come up, these are one of these three things have been missed in the step of actually bringing these dogs and the kids together. And these are the common things that I've seen that constantly cause issues within homes when not addressed. So make sure you introduce your dog correctly. Make sure you create boundaries for your dog to understand how close and when not to be around your kid. And then make sure that you are confident and that you have trained your dog correctly where they listen to you at, um, at a drop of a dime because you're going to need them to, especially in situations that may start off simple and then become bad. So that's the episode of Dante Dog Stories. I appreciate everybody that tuned in, show love. Y'all continue to like the content. Follow me on YouTube. Or subscribe to me on YouTube. Share the videos when y'all see them. Check out some of the older videos. The last video I had an interview with the dog breeder, American Bully breeder at that. Anonymous Kennels Mike. So y'all check out that last interview. Very, very dope interview. Very dope guy as well. And I'll catch y'all at another time. Yes, sir.